You know what they always say, don't judge a book by its cover. The same goes for coasters. Most of the time, you can look at one of those monsters and tell it's gonna be crazy. Or you see something mid-size and think it's gonna be, well, mid. Sometimes you don't know as much as you think you do, and that's what this two-part series is about. Next week, we're gonna look at coasters whose bark is bigger than their bite. But today, let's celebrate the small guys. They don't stand out as anything special, they're not intimidating the general public, but when you ride them, you come off and wonder what just hit you. These are 15 coasters whose bite is bigger than their bark. I had a ton of options here and had to narrow it down to a top 15, but I do have 5 honorable mentions. Matugani at Lost Island is only 79 feet tall and doesn't even hit 47 miles an hour, so why is that launch so punchy? I have no idea. It also combines a good mix of hang time and ejector air time. Not a long ride at just over 1,400 feet, but something you can marathon and not get bored. Vortex at Canada's Wonderland gets buried under the park's monster B&Ms. In the case of Yukon Striker, quite literally, and it's about to have Alpenfury right on top of it. Once it dives off the mountain at 85 feet, it rises up over the station, but from there, it just twists and turns over the water, hitting 55 miles an hour, and by the time you slam to the final brakes, you're left catching your breath. It might be the most intense coaster in the park. Oscar's Wacky Taxi at Sesame Place is at a park for small kids, but this coaster is not for small kids. It has a 39-foot drop, only goes 34 miles an hour, winds around its 1,200-foot course, and the one time I rode it, it was tossing me out of my seat. It's an airtime machine. At a park themed to Sesame Street, on a coaster themed to a trash monster. This is, by far, the best of the Gravity Group family wooden coasters. Reptilian at King's Dominion dates back to 1988. It used to be called Avalanche, and you sit in a 7-car train, not attached to the track, max out at 41 miles an hour, but the last time I rode it, it was crazy intense and out of control. I think all bobsleds have this vibe, but I think the long trains added to the experience. Last one, Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is now 50 years old, the oldest coaster in the park, the max drop being at 39 feet, max speed at 38 miles an hour, but pretty much from the first helix all the way to the final brakes. This has sharp elements, seems to be going way too fast, and if you think this is your typical Aero mine train, it's not. This is in my top 2 mine trains of all time. Only Silver Dollar City's Thunderation beats it. Number 15, Vapor Trail at Sesame Place. Oscars didn't make the cut, but the other coaster in the park does. Vapor Trail is a Vekoma Junior coaster, but it's no cookie cutter. It has a custom layout, and it may not be what you expect. It starts with a 56-foot drop. If you ride in the back, it could whip you over, and that first helix might actually make you gray out. When I told Uncle Nate about this, he called it every baby's first blackout, and I can see why. This might be too intense for your kids. That drop in helix is kind of like a mini i305. I'm happy to say it's butter smooth, even after 26 years, and this so-called junior coaster just might blow your mind. Number 14, Raging Cajun at Six Flags America. This spent 10 seasons at Six Flags Great America, moving here in 2014, and I got my first ride in 2019 and was blown away. This is a Reverchon spinning mouse, 43 feet tall and has one decent sized drop, 29 miles an hour max speed, and after the first half you might get bored, but once that second half starts and the train unlocks, all bets are off. That ride in 2019 was so good, but I thought it could be a one-off. This is a free spin, so weight has a lot to do with it. So when I got back in 2024, I wasn't sure if it would happen again. Sure enough, once again, it was amazing. I don't know what Six Flags America did to this thing, but you spin so hard and so fast, and you don't see that with most other spinning mouse coasters. You might forget this as some lame clone, but it's legit a top coaster in the park. Number 13, Draga Kongan at Jers Summerland. I had never seen an intimate family suspended coaster before, and I assumed it would kinda be like the Vekomas. Fun, definitely family friendly, nothing special. At 98 feet and 53 miles an hour, this has some decent size. And when you add in the tire launch right at the station, the intense lower the ground elements, you realize this isn't really a family coaster. And with Perrotin kinda running slow that day, this was a serious contender for best ride in the park. Number 12, Zippin' Pippen at Bay Beach. 70 feet tall, 63-foot drop, a top speed of 42 miles an hour. A replica of an old wooden coaster that used to be at Liberty Land in Tennessee. Zippin' Pippen looks like a standard wooden coaster. That's what I thought the first time I went to Green Bay to ride it. I didn't think it would be anything special, just a +1 on the stat sheet. But I became a giant cheerleader for this awesome wooden coaster. If you want bite, try the Ejector Death Hill. That's probably the most intense single moment of airtime I've ever experienced, and I think it actually took a bite out of me. Number 11, Prairie Screamer at Prairie Playland. When you go to a flea market, you don't expect to find a coaster. If you do find a coaster, you don't think it's going to be that big. If you do find a coaster that big, you don't think it's going to be that great. After Scandia, Ontario closed their park in 2019, this E&F High Miler went up for sale, and Prairie Playland got their hands on it. A little park inside Traders Village in Grand Prairie, Texas. This stands 90 feet tall, has an 80-foot drop, hits 50 miles an hour, and covers 2,600 feet of track. Very impressive for the size of that footprint. Ride this in the back with a full train, and it's just insane janky airtime goodness from start to finish. I seriously want to put this flea market coaster in my top 50. I don't know if I'm going to do it by the end of the year, but I'm seriously tempted. Number 10. Jetstar 2 at Lagoon. One of Lagoon's oldest coasters, this portable Schwarzkopf doesn't look like much. 1,900 feet of thin steel track wrapping around itself, 44 feet tall, spiraling up and dropping down, going into sharp dives to the ground. When you're waiting in line for it, you might even see maintenance hammer the wooden planks back in place. This is what they use instead of footers. You'd feel lucky to come back to the station in one piece, but Jetstar 2 is more than that. It's crazy intense, those positive G's forcing your head down when you dive into those curves. Sometimes it feels like you're gonna smack your head against the track. It's not the most pleasant ride, it kinda hurts, but it's got a lot of bite. Number 9. Sierra Sidewinder at Knott's Berry Farm. By far, the craziest coaster to be set in a Camp Snoopy, or a Planet Snoopy. Sierra Sidewinder does not belong in a kids area. Let's just start there. This mock spinner is 64 feet tall, starts with a 41-foot drop, only hits 37 miles an hour. But those turns are so tight, it gets so close to the ground, and when it starts turning, it dials up the positive G's. If you have a thrill-seeker kid that's 42 inches, they will worship this coaster. I have almost 700 credits, and I kinda worship it too. It's one of the great so-called family coasters ever. Number 8. Tornado at Bakken. This Intamin spinning coaster has a reputation, having opened in 2009 and serving the fine people of Denmark for 16 seasons. 39 feet tall, 32 miles an hour, barely over 1,100 feet of track. It's got family coaster stats, but it's no family coaster, not even remotely close. It starts with a lift hill that almost feels like a launch, and the first part and the last part of the ride are absolutely bonkers. The middle wasn't that crazy, but then again, I didn't get boost mode. That's where the ride-offs make it even faster and more spinny, but the section off the drop and the section before the brakes will make your eyes bug out. People know about Tornado, you know what you're getting, but from the naked eye, you would not think this ride has so much bite. Number 7. Raven at Holiday World. They had small or portable coasters before, but Raven put this place on the map. It's not tall, not fast, not long. It stands 80 feet, dives underground, maxes out at 48 miles an hour, and covers 2,800 feet of track. All that won the Golden Ticket Award 4 times in a row for World's Best Wooden Coaster. Of all the wooden coasters at Holiday World, this is the most out of control. CCI did such an amazing job to pack this with airtime and fast-paced transitions. It rockets through that course and hits the final brakes with a head of steam. Number 6. Lost Coaster at Indiana Beach. Speaking of CCI masterpieces, Indiana Beach had a dark ride inside a fake mountain, and they wanted CCI to turn it into a coaster. You talk about having nothing to work with. They got creative, and here you have Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain. You have a 35-foot elevator lift, because, well, that's all you could have possibly done. Only 1,400 feet of track, and a max speed at a blazing 20 miles an hour. You sit in enclosed cars in trains of 2 riders facing forward, 2 facing backward, and the way it takes those small bunny hops, those sharp drops inside the mountain. Somehow, someway, CCI made a 20-mile-an-hour coaster feel insane. To this day, I think this is the weirdest coaster I've ridden. Number 5. Flying Turns at Knoebels. In 2005, Knoebels had the urge to bring back the old wooden bobsled, the so-called Flying Turns model from the olden days, and after 8 years, they finally got it done. This is 50 feet tall, maxes out at 24 miles an hour, only has 1,300 feet of track. But when you look at that finely crafted wooden trough, and you consider the park built this in-house, 1,300 feet is a lot. This was always closed for me. No rides over my first 3 trips, and I finally got on during trip number 4, thinking this would be slow and just kind of a novelty, but no. This was terrifying. Flying around those turns at 24 miles an hour never felt more insane. I mentioned Reptilian and how bobsled coasters give that vibe, and that was definitely true with Flying Turns. I love this coaster, expecting some gimmick and ended up getting one heck of a crazy ride. Number 4. Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom. There's a reason more parks don't have a Chance Rides Hyper GTX. They don't have a lot of bark. 100 feet tall, 55 miles an hour, 2,500 feet of track, and no inversions. It's hard to market a coaster like that. But where it lacks in bark, it makes up for in bite. This is Chance Rides' version of an RMC hybrid, just rocketing you out of your seat on every hill. Those airtime moments all being high quality, and I don't think anyone hits the brake run disappointed. Mattel Adventure Park is getting a launch looping version of this next year, but who knows when we'll see another airtime machine that punches you this hard. Number 3. Maverick at Cedar Point. I mentioned Lightning Run and the problem with marketing. Well, in the 2000s, every park was trying to go bigger and faster, breaking the bank to set records, thinking that bark was the only way to get people into the parks. Maverick proved that bite is just as effective. Only 105 feet tall, staying low to the ground, not really visible from the park unless you're right next to it. Mind you, this came right after Millennium Force and Top Thrill Dragster, and yet Maverick draws in the biggest crowds. This coaster barely tops 100 feet but has wild angles, starting with a 95-degree drop, snappy turns, ejector airtime, a 70-mile-an-hour launch, 2 inversions, and 4,450 feet of track. Maverick is nothing but bite. Number 2, RailBlazer at California's Great America, and Wonder Woman at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. When guests come up to one of these RMC Raptors, they're not going to be stunned by the size, they're going to be stunned by the single rail. It's weird to sit single file and ride on just one rail, but these rides aren't just some gimmick. Sure, it's 106 feet tall, it's got a tiny footprint, 1,800 feet of track, but the way RMC designed this layout almost doesn't seem real. They took full advantage of how nimble this is, darting around and diving down, 3 inversions. It only lasts about 24 seconds, but it rips your face off by the time you hit the brakes. People may be scared of the single rail factor, but they should be scared because this ride is designed to tear you in half. Number 1, Batman the Ride at various Six Flags parks. Quick, what's the most intense B&M invert? Afterburn, maybe. Alpengeist, I could see that. Montu, you got a point. But when it comes down to it, I think it's the OG. There are 12 Batman clones, some run better than others, but I think all of them get their point across. 105 feet tall, 50 miles an hour, 2,700 feet of track, and holy cow, these take your breath away. The small, so the B&M inverts happen to be the most intense. I've taken my daughter on Alpengeist and Banshee and Afterburn and a few others, but I still don't think I want her riding a Bat clone. They'll suck the blood right out of your brain and blast it out your toes. Not sure if you wanted that visual, but there it is. Bat clones are not visually impressive, but when they bite, they don't let go. That's a wrap on this video. Let me know what you think, what coasters you've ridden that fit the bill, and don't forget to come back next week when we look for coasters that are all bark and no bite. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. Also, check out my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.